Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. It's your girl, Jacqueline, alongside I guess if we were a cop duo, you would be my Chris Tucker.
That feels
right.
I don't know if I should be claiming either Tucker or Chan. I think I'm like the FBI guys who are just kind of like, we don't need any outside help. We can solve this case ourselves. That's kind of where I feel comfortable.
I would cast you for that.
Or I could be like the dealer at the beginning of the movie, played by Chris Penn. So if you don't know what movie we're talking about yet, you will soon.
We will, definitely. Okay, of course, we're back to Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. And we are literally, I feel like we haven't been rushing enough to get this movie covered here today because the person we have as our guest today
Haven't rushed
enough to make this happen because this is a movie you very much made your personality in a lot of ways because you were just
1,000%.
obsessed.
My entire personality is this film.
That's
Lee Carter.
That is Winston A. Marshall, ladies and gentlemen, actor and host, friend of the podcast who we've had on before. He's part of our crew. Sir, so yeah, Rush Hour. I think even on the last podcast you were on, you may have mentioned Rush Hour in that one.
If there is ever an excuse for me to bring up this movie, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
There is you. I have so much to say. I'm just gonna keep it in.
Keep it in for now. Keep it in for now. But
God.
I know you've been holding on to this for a while. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat as we break down the 1998 comedy action classic. It is rated criminal, 62% fresh on the Tomatometer, but with a 78% audience score. And honestly, I really feel like if we haven't talked about this yet on this podcast, we absolutely should talk about Rush Hour because in so many ways, it is the reason why we were here. It's the reason why I have a job. It's the reason why I get to talk about movies all the time. And I've scammed these people into thinking of it as a profession because Rotten Tomatoes...
Right. We've been celebrating our 25th birthday all year long with events and stuff like that. Rush Hour also celebrating its 25th anniversary. And so those two are kind of tied. Why? Well, because the creator of the website, Rotten Tomatoes, Sen Duong, was a huge Jackie Chan fan. And back in the late 90s, couldn't find a place to really compile all of Jackie Chan's American and Hong Kong film movie reviews into like one kind of concise place. Is like, in so many words, he had mentioned that the only time you really see critic reviews altogether is on a movie poster.
Yeah.
So can we maybe aggregate all these Jackie Chan movie reviews in one place? Lo and behold, he saw Rush Hour was coming out soon and then got an idea.
Yeah. And this was, again, like so many great things that happen in movies, born of a movie fight. Because it wasn't just him at that time. It was also Patrick Lee and the other co-founders of Rotten Tomatoes. They were arguing about what was the most critically acclaimed Jackie Chan movie. And they really didn't have a metric at that time to sort of discern that. They came up with the Rotten Tomatoes metric, 60% is fresh, below that is rotten, and the rest is history. And so it is really fitting for us to cover this as part of our 25th anniversary celebration. You can head on over to RottenTomatoes.com and read up. Alex Vo did an incredible piece that sort of talks about the early days of Rotten Tomatoes and how it was born about an obsession with Jackie Chan. So anytime we cover a Jackie Chan movie, it's really like it's like we're coming home.
Yeah, and Jackie Chan was also kind of that mystery, at least like to kids my age, where you knew that he had these movies. You knew he was a huge superstar. He had a very early Nintendo game where you couldn't really see what the hell was going on. But then you had movies like Rumble in the Bronx come out, and you had like Super Cop, and then you'd occasionally see clips of his older stuff, and like just watching this guy do his own stunts, just like this insane action sequences, and it's like, man, this guy, why isn't he like a huge star in the States? Because we have all these action stars here, like your Van Damme, Seagals by the time the 90s is coming through. Where's Jackie Chan in the mix? Rush Hour comes out, and safe to say he immediately shot to the top of the pack.
Yeah, and being as it was his first sort of American movie, this was definitely a time to look at that because I was one of those people. I didn't know about Rumble in the Bronx before I saw Rush Hour. I found out about Jackie Chan, the myth, the legend, and the lore afterwards. It was this was sort of my first little experience. Winston, I'm going to do this because at this point in our tale, Mark normally gives us a synopsis, but our producer, Mr. Brian Perez, gave me an option, which I think is an option I am willing to take right here, which is, again, I feel like this is only a thing that we need to do for the super fans who come on the podcast to rep their movie.
I'm all too happy to pitch the ball to Winston.
But can we go ahead and pass this, sir? Can you give us a good, quick hit, 30, 45-second synopsis of Rush Hour?
You bet your ass I can. All right, look, here it is, right? Little girl Soo-young, she get kidnapped. It's mainly because Juntao, evil crime lord, he's out here. We find out, spoiler alert, evil British dude. He's pissed off. He don't get to keep Chinese art. Exactly, ridiculous. So, of course, Detective James Carter gets put on a BS assignment from the FBI to watch Chief Inspector Lee as they try and find Soo Young. Now, they're not supposed to be in the mix, but they don't give a damn because Chris Tucker don't give a damn and because Jackie Chan is here for the little girl. And they go on all sorts of misadventures. There's a misunderstanding with the N-word. There's something about some weed. There's this whole thing with the bomb. There's a Chinese restaurant war. What is it good for? And next thing you know, they become best friends, save the day, and, follow the rich white man. He dies in a pool. And he did. That's pretty much it. In all of that, greatest piece of cinema that has ever been made.
He's been asking me to be on the show for this particular movie since he found out there was a show called Rotten Tomatoes This Rocks.
Wow.
Because we've always had you as like one of our core guests way back. Didn't matter if we were talking Avatar.
Yeah.
Didn't matter if it's like, hey, so Rush Hour? It's like, it's fresh, but it's not fresh as it should be. So
No.
No. When it was happening, today is the day.
Don't we have 4 coming? Do we have 4 coming?
4 has always been kind of like rumored in the works.
Okay.
So I think that there was finally like a script that got both Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker's approval in like 2017. Not sure where that's at. I'm sure the strike isn't helping anything.
No.
So pay actors and writers, and then maybe we'll get a sequel
4.
to this beloved IP.
We're getting a Bad Boys 4, so I'm just saying this was kind of in that same sort of like you didn't know that we could make this peanut butter and jelly moment of these two people pairing together. I think this would be the perfect opportunity to throw it on over to Tim, who could sort of like take us back not only to the early days of Rotten Tomatoes, since this was part of our inception, but really to the surprise comedy hit that was Rush Hour.
We were so young.
I know. Take it away, Mr. Tim Ryan.
2 minutes with Tim.
Sen Duong loves movies, and Sen Duong loves to talk about movies. I mean, that seems obvious. You would assume that the guy who came up with the idea for Rotten Tomatoes loves to talk about movies. But Sen is the kind of guy where you can text in the dead of night 2 days before Christmas to tell him you've finally gotten around to seeing the Jackie Chan, Michelle Yeoh classic Super Cop, and that it's awesome. And he will text you back in minutes. Sen is a Jackie Chan super fan. So Rush Hour was a big deal for him, and not just because of the whole founding of Rotten Tomatoes thing. Jackie Chan was already a global superstar, but it was Rush Hour that established him as a huge box office draw in the States. I still remember the night I saw Rush Hour on VHS in a friend's basement, mostly because we had a great time watching it. But I couldn't know how momentous that night would be in retrospect, that this would be the thing to which I would owe my livelihood. Few would dispute that Rush Hour followed several familiar templates, from the buddy comedy to the fish out of water scenario. But critics largely responded positively to the complementary comic chemistry between Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, though more than a few grumbled that Rush Hour was not as good as Chan's Hong Kong masterpieces. Rush Hour is fresh at 62% on the Tomatometer with 77 reviews, and it has a 78% audience score. So what did the critics have to say? In a fresh review, Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times wrote, "Rush Hour is lightweight and made out of familiar elements, but they're handled with humor and invention." However, in a rotten review, Mark Savlov of the Austin Chronicle wrote, "While it's always a rush to see Chan ingratiate himself before the camera, and therefore the audience, this is hardly the showcase for his myriad talents." The Rotten Tomatoes critics' consensus reads, "While it won't win any awards for originality, the combustible chemistry between its stars means Rush Hour hits just as hard on either side of the action-comedy divide." So that's Rush Hour. Let's kick it back to Jacqueline and Mark, who are always certain of exactly who kicked them. Because in this case, it's me, kicking it back to them. Back to you, folks.
You had to make
Timmy.
us giggle. If it's Rush Hour, you have to make us giggle. This movie is absolutely hysterical. But what's so crazy about it is the stories around it, as what happens so often with, I think, movies like this. Like, this is our generation's Lethal Weapon, and it has just as much, like, history
It
to
really
go
does.
into it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. First of all, so being as this movie had an indelible impression on you, where was the first time you saw it? Let's start there.
I saw it in theaters. I'll tell you this much. I have seen it so many times. I don't think I remember any particular time that I've seen it other than the one I just did this morning.
Oh, wow.
Because I genuinely don't think I have seen.
That's how you start your day. That had nothing to do with this show.
For a while, Mark, it
Yeah.
really was. Like, I'll tell you, during the pandemic, I genuinely think I watched the first 2 films 100 times.
Sure.
Wow.
Like I'm not kidding, which means I've probably seen this film like 500 times in the course of my life. It is just flawless.
Yeah.
I honestly, and it sounds weird to be saying that. I understand, obviously, I'm gonna have my, like thoughts on it and everything else like that, and my own biases. But like, I think you found the perfect balance of like lightweight. I'm only teasing you racism till we can understand each other, and like just enough action,
Yeah.
and like the exact type of comedy that was just like ruling the day. And honestly, Chris Tucker was already on his way to being a superstar, but this was it. Like, he had Money Talks. He obviously was in Friday. This was that moment that I feel like kind of pushed him into over. All of a sudden now he's hanging out with Michael Jackson every day.
Yeah, I mean, he
Yeah.
went. It's safe to say you think Rotten Tomatoes is wrong. That 62% is too low.
Rotten Tomatoes has never been more wrong in their entire existence.
Thank you.
It's still fresh.
And it doesn't matter. This is a 100%. This is a flawless movie. There is nothing wrong with this film. The only thing that I could think that would be so wrong is that the dude that was selling the camel's hump and the eel, he should have got more lines. I ain't no punk bitch. He should have got more lines. That's the only thing. Otherwise, this movie is perfect.
This movie, I do think, is a victim of the buddy cop
Mm.
plethora.
Mhm.
Like, if we were going to talk now about superhero tea, let's be real. The buddy cop thing. I mean, let's talk about it. Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy,
Mhm.
Danny Glover, and Mel Gibson. There's just been so many iconic and incredible. I mean, Turner and Hooch. Like, I don't know. There's so many like buddy cop type
And
vibes.
Beverly Hills Cop with
Beverly
Eddie
Hills
Murphy
Cop,
too.
exactly
Yeah.
too. Even though that was more of like a singular effort, everything he's doing with Judd Hurst puts you in like that buddy movie.
Judge Reinhold.
Judge Reinhold. Did
Yeah.
I say Judge Hurst? Sorry. That would have been even funnier if we just took this to Taxi / Beverly Hills Cop crossover. No, let's not do that. But
yeah,
no.
but you do feel the very similar beats. Like, you kind of know where this movie's heading, even if it's the
Yes.
first time you see it. But it's the ride that it takes you on, and it's the fact that you don't just have. Like, the thing about a buddy cop movie up to this point was you always had somebody who was a little, you had like the loose cannon,
Yeah.
who was like your Mel Gibson or your Eddie Murphy. And then you had like the by the book, we can't do this, can't
Yeah.
get in trouble. That would be your Danny Glover, 3 Days to Retirement. That would be your Judge Reinhold.
Yeah.
That would be your Nick Nolte, right?
Yep.
Where it's kind of like somebody who's anti-establishment and the establishment.
Mhm.
But here you have two guys who are both willing to break every rule in the book
Yeah.
in their respective books that they follow,
Fair.
that are two very different books from one another, because Jackie Chan's coming to a whole new country and Chris Tucker is coming from the LAPD, and they're both like kind of swimming in these shark-infested FBI traitor waters.
Mhm.
And so to see both of them embrace the journey that they're on, neither one of them, unlike all the other buddy cop movies, neither one of them are pulling back on the reins. They're kind of trying to go in their own direction with it, but they're both willing to see what the set of rules is and say, we're not playing by this because we're on a mission.
Yeah.
On top of that, I think one of the things that can't be missed here is you're actually talking about a full cultural just like mashup. Because
Yeah.
at the very least, when you're talking Lethal Weapon, when you're talking Beverly Hills Cop, yes, black people, white people, black people do this, white people do this. All Americans, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a general understanding of each other's culture. Not a deep one, but one that like makes sense. For black folk, it was literally just Wu-Tang Clan
Yeah.
and a couple of films that came over. And for Asian folk, they ain't mess with us at all.
Yeah.
Right.
So then all of a sudden, now they're seeing Jackie Chan in this American film and they're seeing black culture, and all of a sudden that hip hop starts having a massive boom over in Asia. And in the same breath, now all of a sudden you're seeing black folk really getting into beyond what they were seeing in Wu-Tang with martial arts films and everything else. And you're really finding two cultures fully mash up. And that was something that I think was also so special about this, was the fact that you genuinely had an idea of fish out of water running both ways. Like you were mentioning, them both trying to get in the middle of this FBI mix and just figure this whole thing out. Carter more aspirational of wanting to do big things, and Jackie just trying to protect what is essentially his niece. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
I think what's interesting with this too is it harkens back, because the thing that was great about it, and look, there's a lot of Hong Kong movie fans who said this was weak sauce, both on the action and just sort of like the plotting of it. But what was interesting is, yeah, it was maybe weak sauce Hong Kong, but this is not the most hard-hitting hip-hop elements that we're
Right.
bringing into this either. We're
Right.
doing very family-friendly versions of both of these cultures and blending them together in this very commodified way. But look, there's just some dope really great action moments that play over some of the best 90s hip hop that you will ever have. And the fact that these also happen to be 90s hip hop bands who also had a mix of Asian in them, like Emile, that was definitely her thing, was she was always mixing Asian stuff into her raps. You have Drew Hill, they were always with the dragons and the tigers.
Wasn't that Cisco's first? It was Unleash the Dragon.
Unleash the Dragon, yes.
Man.
And then you have the Wu-Tang
And Wu-Tang's
Clan.
on the soundtrack
so even
too, yeah.
in that, even though they were doing this blend for a very commercialist prospect, that album solidified so much of that. I mean, honestly, I think I saw this at the Dollar Theater because I didn't see it on its initial run because it was the movie playing on MTV that made me want to go see it. I mean, I was like 15 when this came out.
So
you
I
know?
was a freshman in college in the fall of '98 when this came out, and so we one of the great bonding experiences of any group of dudes who's all figuring each other out for the first time. We went to go to see The Waterboy. We went to go see Rush Hour. Went to go see American Pie, I think, the next year. And so it's just all these movies that kind of unite dudes.
Yeah.
And so the thing about this that I forgot is that it really does start off as this is we're an action movie here. We're a Jackie Chan action movie because that's the first sequence you get. And then you get, what I love is you go back in the history of cinema. There's not a lot of times you can see somebody who we had seen in movies before, like Chris Tucker. We knew that he could be funny from Friday, but we didn't know if he could be the lead in something like this or if he could just be kind of wisecracking. Can that become what Eddie Murphy lived up to being, which is I'm not just funny on SNL. I can carry franchises. Here comes Chris Tucker, the first scene where he's kind of negotiating with Chris Penn. And then it's you realize, holy crap, this guy is a movie star.
And I don't know a ton, but I know a little bit about sort of the back. That's all Chris and just Penn in the car. That's not in the script. And then when you look back on it now, you realize how much of this movie was put on Jackie Chan's physicality and Chris Rock's on-the-spot improv writing ability.
Chris Tucker, girl.
Chris Tucker.
Girl. Oh my God.
Sorry.
Okay, maybe it was a Freudian slip because Chris Rock was one of the many actors who was approached.
His name is
to do
literally
role.
sitting here.
That's fair.
Eddie Murphy,
Dave Chappelle,
and Eddie Murphy turned this project down to do Holy Man. Retrospect is hindsight's 2020, and Wesley Snipes turned this down to do Blade,
which I don't. As much as I love this movie, and obviously Wesley Snipes was already a movie star at that point. I think that's the one thing that people just immediately associate with Wesley, maybe for his career, is that, and especially a lot of people saying the modern day superhero film really kind of came out of Blade, which then tumbled into Spider-Man and then forward. So I think that was the right decision for him as well.
But both Eddie and Wesley had already done a movie like this,
right?
Because Wesley had done White Men Can't Jump, which is essentially a buddy cop movie on a basketball court.
Absolutely.
And then you have Eddie Murphy, who'd already done the 48 Hours run.
Right.
And he already did Beverly Hills Cop.
So I think they look at this and they're beyond that point in their career as far as the genre.
Right.
And so I can forgive them.
And I also think that's why, again, this movie as it is pitched is not the movie that we got. And it's definitely not the movie that I think we were supposed to get. Nobody knew that Chris would be as good as he was, or the chemistry between him and Jackie would be as good as it was, despite the fact, according to everyone on set, Jackie was miserable the entire time.
Yeah, and I did hear about that, and a lot of it being from the standpoint of, and he even talks about it in the behind the scenes at the end, the bloopers. He's like, my English, he cannot say 3 words. He's genuinely just getting to a place where he's starting to feel comfortable with English, and half the time he has no idea what the hell Chris is saying. And that's, again, a cultural stigma of I don't know what slang is.
And he's improvising. And that's the other thing. He's learning the lines as they are on the script. Chris is improvising, which is what's making it so funny, which is also why when you really look at the film, Jackie's the butt of the joke for the whole film. He's not really able to participate in the comedy. I mean, look, he's silent. For what? God. Good 45 minutes.
It really eases the blow of being the butt of the joke when you can kick that much ass, though.
Exactly.
But think about
Chris
Jackie.
Could be so inept.
But now that you've gone back, because I've gone back and looked at Jackie's stuff, when you go back and look at it, he's the joke and the action in all of his movies.
Oh, yeah,
You know what I mean? So I can see why he felt really some kind of way about being. It was always that it was funny that this little goofy little guy kicked so much butt, and now it's like, oh, you're a goofy little guy, and you kick. You know what I mean? There's no jokes there.
Yeah, I mean, the way you really learn it when you watch the outtakes of this movie, because the action sequences, I still think that they hold up well, because there's very few people who can do that. But you also compare that to like Super Cop and like other things that he's done. And so when you watch the outtakes, it's like the worst injury that happened to Jackie Chan is like he landed on a chair awkwardly. You know? It's not exactly the same level of danger he's putting his body in. So for him, maybe the adrenaline rush wasn't there of being on set, but you cannot deny that what you read on the page from this movie is not what sells it. It's once you get them on a set together and they start doing their weird improv, which is not always language based. It's more reactionary physically, but it all just it's ingredients that you look at on a list and you say, I don't know how this works, but when you taste it,
again, it's that peanut butter and chocolate feel. Like, again, good buddy cops do that.
It's Sour Patch Kids on popcorn. You wouldn't think it's good until you try it.
Y'all are not giving it justice. This is Kobe getting drafted and now he's teamed up with Shaq. This is you were talking about one of the greatest dudes. You know that meme that goes around all the time? It's like, man, this is amazing. This is like Kobe and Shaq, and then they do the highlights of the two of them like dunking it out. That's exactly what this is. And the funny thing is, I love that they played into the fact that they each have their strong point. So it's Chris can talk his way out of anything. How many times should Chris have gotten shot in the face?
Fair.
And he's like, put your gun down and fight me like a man. And all of a sudden, and it's like, how many times does Jackie, again, because of the language barrier, because of the slang, not knowing the streets of LA, he's getting himself into trouble. Like, he do what I do. What's up, and then all of a sudden he's getting his ass whooped, or he thinks he's about to, but he's able to hold his own. And then they're learning off of each other. That's the thing that's so interesting, is that the symbiosis that ends up happening between these two characters is just palpable. And it obviously we're not talking about two. But two, it just amps itself up. Now Jackie feels good about his English. He's throwing jokes back. At one point, Chris says,
Is that when they go to Asia?
They go to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So that's where, because that picks up immediately after this one. You get Chris at one point saying, I'll bitch slap you back to the Ming Dynasty. And then you get Jackie saying, I'll bitch slap you back to Africa. Like, all of a sudden now Jackie got jokes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God.
And the thing that you mentioned, okay, so again, like, I realized this was going to be a big movie months before it came out, because I do remember being in a movie theater before I went to college with a couple of high school buddies. We went to go see Lethal Weapon 4, right? And that was a packed movie theater, like just outside of the city
which did have Chris Rock in it.
Of DC, which did have Chris Rock in it. So you're still not fully adjudicated, but we're apologizing for you.
I mean, I am not the first person in the history of the world to confuse Chris Tucker with Chris Rock.
There's a lot of very funny Chris's.
I mean,
so we're sitting in the movie and the trailers are running, right? And a couple trailers go by. Trailer for Rush Hour comes on. The entire theater was rolling, and there's very few times that I can say a movie trailer, it can excite you. Like if you're seeing like a huge franchise come back, like those are exciting trailers to see. Everybody in the theater was rolling, because it was, I think that one of the scenes they use is You Never Touch a Black Man's Radio.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And seeing Jackie Chan, just the pure childlike joy in hearing the Beach Boys, something he finally identifies with America. Chris Tucker being slapping it.
Don't ever touch a black man's radio, boy.
Good.
And the cover on that is when he starts doing the whip.
Yeah. And then he's
like
looking at
that
the
right there.
The whole time,
Like that whip was just
his celebrations, whether it's at the beginning when he foils the crime and he's dancing in the street. This even at the end, when his reaction to stuff, it's just on a level like you can count on one hand the people who can make me laugh like that.
Literally, the sideways gun. With this?
Yeah.
Like, who can, like, that was not a thing, but with the gun, I'm just like, of course, Chris Tucker's been doing Michael Jackson impersonations since he was on stage at the Laugh Factory. It's not a new thing, but just him doing it in that way, it was just so hilarious.
I think the thing that gets me above all those, because you're right, it is about the physicality, and what I love is that they each have their own physicality. So for Chris, it is the very like loud kind of slapstick like physical humor, but his dance moves and all that, and how he moves, and then obviously with Jackie with martial arts and whatnot. It's these one-liners.
Yeah.
These one-liners are the things that you literally quote for your entire life. You don't believe me. One of my best friends in the whole world, as we graduated college, we just got a bunch of guys together trying to find a place to live. And then we were on our way to go look at a house. And I was just like, hey, man, like, what are some of your favorite movies? He's like, Rush Hour. I said, wait, what? And so it would be a situation where I'd be like, yo, Jeff, where you at, man? He'd be like, oh, my bad, I was in the back. I've been looking for your sweet and sour chicken ass. Like, where else you gonna get something like that? Like, that's, oh my God. And let alone, you had everything out of that 80s, 90s action film stuff like Wipe Yourself Off, You're Dead. Like, that's genius. Oh, what's wrong? Nothing at all. It's Rush Hour. Like, what? What? I'm sorry. I'm getting.
Well, this is the thing. You shouldn't get so upset about it. And this is where I will stand back with it. It's not even that I think Rush Hour is bad. I do think that at that time, I hate to say it, Eddie Murphy and the funny black men of that era made it seem like that was a lot easier than it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they have been just glutted on the, Eddie Murphys and Chris Rocks and Chris Tucker.
Throw Martin Lawrence in there.
Martin Lawrence and Dave Chappelle.
And Will Smith in the middle of Fresh Prince.
And now looking back on it, especially looking back now to see the bereft of people that are able to recreate that level of success, you realize how special those people were at that time. And how, like, even when those guys show up now, I just saw Chris in Air. Doing it in a way that you would not expect in this next chapter of his life. I don't think people appreciate how singular these folks' talent was. I think, like, maybe if there's anybody I see right now that could do what these guys are doing, it's like Keenan, and he's just happy being on SNL.
Yeah, I think he found what kind of serves him best.
Yeah.
And with Chris Tucker, I think, like, you still see when the audience response when he goes up on stage, because he's popped into places, clubs that I've been working, and it's like, you see the audience loves him. He is not just like people like, oh, I'm a fan of Chris Tucker. He is beloved. And it's one of those intros. And I talk about an intro like this where I used to see it happen with Robin a lot, where you say the person's name and the audience gets excited, but they don't fully go crazy yet because they don't believe you.
Yeah.
They're not going to believe you until they see this human being whose name you just said actually on stage, and then they lose their effing minds. And it's so fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, like that. Like here is he, and then they
is it real? And it is. And I think one of the reasons why, just from a comedy perspective, Winston, is like, we see so much in stand-up where you have comics that are looking for that perfect line to walk between race, between stereotypes, between what is funny and what is offensive. And you mentioned something really interesting at the top of this, where you feel like Rush Hour can be accused of going over that line, but it can also be the perfect marriage of, hey, this is funny but not insulting. This is a laugh, and we can say this because we're friends. And so anybody can watch this and think it's okay. The problem is, like, to Jacqueline's point, there's very few people that are as talented as Chris Tucker and as Jackie Chan. So I still feel like watching this works and laughing at it is good. It's just, be careful when you're trying it at home.
Absolutely. That's the thing that makes me sad. I don't think you could make Rush Hour today.
I don't. I belie that fact. You can make it. It just looks different.
Yes. It does look different. You were spot on with that. The reason why I sort of push back and say no is that we are now in a more globalized society than we were back then. We were starting to get to that point. So a lot of what makes this comedy work is it is really two people that really know nothing about each other other than very surface level things. So I think now that we're in a space, so it's not just you got to be PC or anything like that. I just think Black folk know a lot about China and Japan and Korea and all that.
We're in a post K-pop world. We can't pretend we don't know about a lot.
That's fascinating. So like, for instance, the insult, the sweet and sour chicken reference, it's like, it's funny and it can, be considered racist, but it also is literally probably one of the three things that any kid in the 80s or 90s growing up knew. He didn't know he was eating eel.
Yeah.
No idea. Absolutely no idea. And I think that's the only other thing that makes this so special as well is, again, this was a vehicle for both sides to genuinely start to learn something about each other. And then again, as you went into the second one, that's where it even amped it up a notch. And now all of a sudden, since we actually are in China, we're in Hong Kong, now all of a sudden we're really getting to see what culture's like over there. Like, you had a few films before, because I want to say the second one was 2002?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously,
it's funny. I think one of them takes place on the day that British rule left
Really?
Yeah.
This one does.
This one is
This one
the first
starts
one. Yeah,
out.
the first one starts out with that. I was gonna say one of them opens with that. And
Right.
This one, yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, Tom Wilkinson? Because I forgot Tom Wilkinson was like the bad guy at the end of it. And I see Tom I'm like, man, that guy, okay.
Well, that was 25 years ago. And
Right.
now, like, that's one of the biggest, like, things right now is, like, in Hong Kong, all of those provisions that they were, like, literally joking about in the beginning of this movie would
Right.
happen
Right.
have officially happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's, like, literally happened.
So I think that's just the big thing above all else is that what makes this film, I think, more special than anything is that its ability to reach so many different people on so many different levels. And while it was obviously like black folk and Asian folk sitting here and like we're kind of laughing at each other, whatever, the white folk were all the time like, I mean, that is kind of funny though. I
Yeah.
didn't know that about black folk. I didn't know that about Asian folk.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. It's a you don't do that with somebody you just met or with strangers, but
Right.
like if you have that kind of instant chemistry, and I think it really does help that at the end of this movie, Chris Tucker had such a great time. He's going on vacation
Exactly.
as Lee goes back home to Hong Kong, and they're both and it's just another one that like I remembered it and I knew it was coming and I was bracing for it and I still laughed out loud in my place by myself. Is you know he's gonna hate the fact that this is a 15-hour flight.
Yeah.
And when he actually is like, how
Well,
long
what
is
we
this
gonna
flight?
do?
We've seen this movie for 90 minutes now. We know how this character reacts to adversarial news.
Yeah.
He hears 15 hours. It's so good. Oh, it's perfect.
And that was back when a time when I didn't know how long that flight would
Me
take.
either.
Like now I'm like,
Yeah.
I know that the minute you say you're going
We're
to China.
too
got an
worldly.
iPad.
Yeah.
You got all that
Speaks
set
to
up.
what you say about there was a time when I wouldn't have known that when I was watching this in '98 that was they were getting ready for like that long of a flight.
Mhm.
But now I'm like, the minute he says I'm going to Hong Kong, I'm like, what seat y'all got?
Otherwise, like, good thing you were first class. Like, good Lord.
Seriously, what seat y'all got?
But to that point, I think the other thing that was so interesting is that it then made, I think one of the hardest, you would know above anybody else, one of the hardest things to do with a joke, and in this case, a comedic film, is to stick the landing. What is the very last thing we leave on?
Mhm.
And so to not only end it on this going to be a 15-hour flight, but the callback to him singing War and be like, oh, hell no, still it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell no. That there was something so palpable about that because now you're already, they are right where they left off. They like, it just, your mind just goes into this place of like, oh my God, that flight must have been insane. And so it feels like the movie doesn't even end for you because now you're in your mind, you're going home being like, damn, Chris Man did a movie.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
And then you get the outtakes, and then
Yeah.
I was
and
just
then
gonna say
it's-
Mark's favorite part is the
it's-
outtakes.
My
I
God.
love me outtakes in comedies anyway, and in Jackie Chan films.
Yeah.
But they just go to another level here. They really do.
See how difficult is that? My English, you even cannot say 3 words. Chinese. You need some lunch?
I got it before, Jackie.
I mean, I get like again, I'm not trying to say that Brett Ratner doesn't have an eye of originality. Others have already said that.
Yeah.
But look, I will say this. This movie has no business being as good as it is. And I think that's what the score speaks to. Because as I look at that, I'm like, yeah, they're doing their Caddyshack outtake. Everything that's great about this movie is something that has been done before, that is just being directly robbed.
But I'll be honest with you, that's why I was using
Yeah.
the Kobe Shaq analogy.
Yeah.
Because Chris Tucker, again, you mentioned Eddie Murphy, you mentioned Wesley Snipes, Chris Rock. They all had done this before.
Yes.
So that's Chris Tucker's coming in like Kobe behind Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan's already been in the game. A lot of people would call Eddie Murphy the Michael Jordan of like comedies
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And then Jackie is the most dominant person in the game. So that's your Shaq, where he's literally just dominated all of
Yeah.
Hong Kong, and now you're bringing Chris into this world, and magic happens.
And
Yeah.
this takes place in Los Angeles.
It
Yes.
takes place
Same
in
year
LA.
that Kobe and Shaq
And
teamed
they
up.
filmed here in Los Angeles. I don't know if that was back when it was cheaper or they got the tax credits, but let's be real, Los Angeles is a great third character in
Yes,
this.
it is.
And just the same way that they make Hong Kong a great third character in the second one.
Absolutely, it's one of the most beautiful. Like just seeing the city, it's fun to like knowing the city, and especially looking at it now in 2023, being like, oh, is that still there?
Yeah.
I know exactly where they are in the city, etc.
And they stick in Inglewood and Chinatown. Like
Yes,
they
they do.
really
Mhm.
do. Like it's
Yes, they do.
It's almost funny, but in the same respect, I really do respect for what they did with this, the things that they got great was the blending.
Yes,
I
it did.
don't want to get out of here without getting y'all to talk about the soundtrack because I want to know what Mark's experience with the soundtrack is because I have a feeling I know what our experience with it was, but I want to know what you
You
were.
talk about eyes being open
Was this
to
on your jock
different
jams?
cultures. That's where you heard it.
I
You
know
started
that's
hearing
where you
this stuff
heard
at like
it.
frat parties and stuff, and it's like, well, this isn't, this isn't whatever, like Matchbox 20. This isn't Gin Blossoms. This isn't whatever else was like popular. This isn't Atlantis. It's something completely different. And so in the same way that Chris and Jackie kind of figure each other's cultures out, it's like this Wu-Tang thing, like this, the kids seem to like it, And then, but at the same
Wu-Tang is
time,
for the children.
I think there's
Wu-Tang is for the kids.
there's a Jay-Z Ja Rule collaboration.
Yes.
And at that time, it's like, who's going to be bigger, Jay-Z or Ja Rule? I mean, they're both pretty
At
pretty
that
good.
time, that
Yeah.
was a question. We now
Yes,
know
it was.
this is pre-Fire Festival and billionaire status. But did we know that's where they would be?
We did not. We did
not.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think this is a situation. Jay-Z obviously was already Jay-Z, but this was, I think, the beginning point of
His commerciality.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, white people knew who Jay-Z was. In the same way that there was a point where Taylor Swift went from being like some country star to being one of the biggest pop stars maybe ever.
Yeah. Oh.
What? Because I said the word maybe?
The fact that it's even, we're going to discuss this later. I'm sorry. I'm in a very look, I'm getting ready to go to Beyonce this weekend. I just can't listen to that white woman's name this week.
That's fine.
He said one of.
I said one of. I didn't say.
I don't even like the maybe. What is her, okay, sorry.
Call
We're
me
going to take a
maybe.
quick detour.
We're
What
in
is
the-
Taylor Swift's best moment? Like most like she made national news for her moment.
It wasn't her doing it. It was Kanye.
And what was Kanye
Trying to-
talking about when he went up there to rain on that white woman's parade? Beyonce.
Beyonce.
So Taylor's biggest moment.
While I don't disagree, a lot of people would make the argument, mainly white people, mainly white women would make the argument, the fact that literally folks have been clamoring
Hey, you wanna
outside of
ask-
stadiums.
You want to ask who's been able to sell and commodify herself best
agree.
to fans?
For
Taylor Swift? This is for the culture.
I don't disagree
They're literally
with you.
white people lost their mind because Beyonce showed up with a black beret at the Super Bowl.
I also remember
Taylor
that.
ain't got that kind of impact.
I don't
Even if
know.
she wore blackface.
You remember, wait.
Lemonade is something that people still talk about now. There are women that are filing divorce filings and quoting her
I
lyrics
agree.
in that.
I agree, but I think there is something very scary that we have to point out about how these white women have fully unionized behind the Eras tour. Like we kept
By
saying,
the way, I don't disagree with you
Yeah.
on that commodity. But this is the thing. Once the checks are cashed, it's going to be over. And we are still going to be talking about Blue Ivy being her first biggest
I
moment.
believe I have a solution, if I may offer a truce.
Also, why am I defending Taylor Swift?
You are. I have
We
put you
need-
on this
the only
podcast
way
to
to
talk
solve
about
this
Taylor Swift.
Is
I'm sorry.
We
need to
are
get away from
gonna
this.
make the next generation a great buddy cop films, and you already know who I'm casting. Beyonce and Taylor Swift. Rush
here's the
Hour
problem.
4 in a way you never thought you'd
But here's
see
the
before.
problem.
And it
And
will
I
be
don't-
just as disappointing as her collab with Lady Gaga. What?
Because like I really don't want the Beehive coming for me. I can admit that Beyonce is one of the most powerful, incredible performers, singers, songwriters
You said
like
one
ever.
of.
The only good acting job I've seen her do was Carmen the Hip Hopper.
Listen.
I
will give you this. First of all,
I love that
I'm
none of
a
the
Taylor.
comments on this episode are going to be about me.
I know. It's like, I love Taylor Swift. I do not want any Swifties coming for me. I just want to say Taylor Swift is going to be a capital B billionaire, one of the most successful pop artists in the world.
Yeah.
But when you talk about cultural influence,
I
I
don't
will just
disagree.
remind you that it's like
I don't disagree.
Beyonce is about, there's like a legacy and a culture and a difference there.
You
I
know,
agree.
you know what's great about, you can tell how huge both of them are is because you all had your strong points, and then you immediately said, I don't want the fan base coming for me.
No.
I don't want that
I don't
fan
want
base
this
coming
one.
for
I
me.
know.
So.
I
I
don't
mean, again,
Yeah.
I will always point to this one, and Taylor Swift fans get, so I'm like, give me her biggest moment, Kanye. And what was her biggest moment talking about?
Yeah.
Not her.
Yeah.
Not her.
Yikes. So back to Jay-Z and Ja
Let's
Rule.
get back to this.
Shoot.
Let's get back to Rush Hour. No, but no, the soundtrack. So you were in it. just not in it.
It's an experience. It's an eye-opening experience.
Okay.
The soundtrack was because white people had, we knew what the beats of the movie were going to be. We've seen buddy cop movies. We're like, you mean I could hang out with Eddie Murphy one day? Like that's kind of we're all living vicariously through Nick Nolte or through Judge Reinhold or through Mel Gibson. Lethal Weapon was so different because everybody thought like Mel Gibson was like the cool character.
Raj was still cooler.
So
Raj was still cool though. He was old man.
Roger was great. We all wanted to have like his life because he had like a nice family life, and Mel Gibson is like sitting on the beach in a trailer with a dog trying to take a gun out of his mouth. So yeah, we'd rather be Danny Glover.
Psycho
but
badass.
you always wanted to be as cool as somebody like Eddie Murphy. And so now when you watch Rush Hour, you know what the beats of the movie are going to be, but you didn't know how it was going to tell the story, and you didn't know that the soundtrack was going to be so big accompanying. And so everybody was having their eyes open at the same time in the same way that the Asian culture is starting to appreciate Black culture and vice versa.
It's funny because this was definitely the first Ja Rule song I had ever heard.
What?
Ja Rule? This is the first Ja Rule song I had ever heard.
Really?
Like, what did Ja have before this song? Like Ja was obviously in the scene, but what mega hit did Ja Rule have before 1998?
He was featured on so much Murder Inc. stuff that I knew he was because he did the Fat Joe stuff.
True. I'll put it up. Wait a minute, no, because I want to say What's Love came out after this in like 2000.
What's Love came out of this, but didn't Fat Joe do New York and The Locks and all this before?
I thought that was also 2000.
That was 2000. Okay, well then never mind.
So because I remember this being the first time that Josh showed up like this, and again, Jay had been. If you followed hip hop, you knew who Jay-Z was.
You knew who he was, but this was
the superstar
something
moment.
when my people were like, oh, this guy's a force to be reckoned with.
They were still calling him Hove.
Exactly. So allow me to reintroduce myself. So it's a situation where you're not only talking about now the blending of cultures of Chinese culture and Black culture, you're now looking at how many superstars did this launch. People knew who Jackie Chan was. Jackie Chan now goes from being a mega superstar in Asia to a worldwide name. Right. Chris Tucker goes from being, man, that dude was really funny in Friday. He was really good in Money Talks, but that, even though that was his movie, Charlie Sheen had top billing. Now Chris Tucker is an A-list celebrity. Now you've got Jay-Z has worldwide appeal. Ja Rule is now all of a sudden on the scene, and people started looking at what his name is. Like, how many stars did this movie make in all different plethoras? It's insane.
And then Wu-Tang did the Forever collab
where
they came back together.
Yes, they did.
After this, Cream.
And this was...
Oh, it's Cisco. What's wrong with me?
Cisco,
Unleash the Dragon, like we mentioned, the thong song comes out a year later.
Yeah.
Man.
Was the thong song after this?
Yeah.
It's 1999, baby.
Yeah.
Wow. This really did do a lot. This was 98. This was fall of 98.
Keep it.
Sequel comes out in 2001 and also does huge business. The sequel, which I've heard from a lot of people, I really had fun watching this one again, that Rush Hour 2 is the best of the bunch. That is 51% rotten on the Tomatometer. Rush Hour 3 is 17%. I don't know that I've ever seen Rush Hour 3, but Winston, is Rush Hour 2 comparable with this? Is there a clear, better film in your eyes?
So in all honesty, I see 1 and 2 as just one giant film. Yeah. To me, they're
like the Kill Bills or something like that.
The Kill Bills. This is, we don't really talk about Matrix 3, but like 2 and 3, how that's actually one film that they just broke up because it was going to be too long.
It's even your Lord of the Rings.
Infinity War and Endgame. This is Infinity War and Endgame. You just don't have 10 years of films to come before. You know what I'm saying?
Thank God for that. No, I'm just kidding. No, seriously. Again, the beats of this are great and they're nummy. I think I can commit to 2 helpings, unless it's going to be like a situation like Bad Boys 4. Like, it's one of those things where, like, if enough time passes, I'll want to see this. But,
I loved Bad Boys for Life.
It was great.
Yeah,
I loved it.
And I wanted to. I was like rooting for it the whole time. Like, it's not like I was like, is this going to be any good? Like, please be good. I think I'd probably feel the same way if another Rush Hour ever came to pass.
I mean, look, we can debate that on another day because we do have to get out of here. Because look, we got plenty more Rush Hour movies to cover apparently, so we could discuss whether or not Rotten Tomatoes is wrong. I don't think we can make a single argument why you would not be here for that, sir.
Come on now.
If we have to discuss it,
if we ever expand into music, God help us.
Listen, I know there's
got a fun little sampling
of that. What I love is there's like a huge portion of the audience that feels I'm coming for Taylor Swift. I like her. I like her a lot. I will sing all of her songs. In fact, I like her country stuff better. Today Was a Fairy Tale. Go back to December. We are here. We are here. Beyonce is the culture.
No,
I
it's
agree. I agree with
Beyonce
you.
is the culture.
It's the same way I feel about like Motley Crue, where people talk about Motley Crue, and I'm like, yeah, they're good. Like, no, they're like and I'm like, okay, let's just.
Let me just
relax.
tell you something.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's exactly it. It's
even-
like, she's great.
right.
even to the point, and I'll give you this as well. And Madonna also kind of started that, but Beyonce. If you want to talk about somebody that's starting with Destiny's Child, how many times has Beyonce evolved?
Girl.
And so, in the same way that you see that Taylor looked at her predecessors and understood that, and then made the decision to do it, hence even calling it out by calling her tour the Eras Tour,
Yeah.
understanding how important it is to survive in that. It's a whole other podcast.
And
We-
a
we-
whole
Did you
nother
go to the
podcast.
Taylor Swift show?
I did not.
Okay,
Oh.
'cause
But I
you
also
you
know that
seem
if
like
I-
you have recently been touched
Oh,
by an angel. And I wonder.
I've live streamed the whole thing though.
Okay.
I've watched
It's-
somebody's live stream for the whole
it's-
thing. It was awesome.
It's more that if I didn't defend Taylor like this, I was gonna sleep on the couch. So like, I
Oh,
just had
you
to,
got somebody- you got
I
somebody to know?
I would just get a knife put to my
Actually-
You have
throat.
your own lieutenant to
I have
report
an
to.
info-
Pretty much.
I have an infiltrator in my house, and the only saving grace is that he liked Destiny's Child first. Like, the only saving grace I have for it is the only reason why he doesn't like Beyonce as that much is because he likes Destiny's Child better.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm like,
goodness
that's the
I
only
live with
reason
a
why-
sweet dog who only listens to
I know,
meditation
I
music.
know. That is it for us today. Before we get out of here, sir, Mr. Winston A. Marshall, and I do love that we have to put the A in the middle of there. Like, no, this is specific.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
What are you working on? Where can folks find you?
Yeah, you can find me at the Swaggy Blurred across all platforms, man. I've been doing a show over on TikTok and Instagram called Breakfast AM News.
Yay.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
I'm
it.
a fan.
Thank you so much.
What do you do?
Think weekend update in about 90 seconds. So it's just like taking the news stories that have been coming out and just dropping jokes, man. And the part of that is both there's just been a lot of nonsense going on, and I broke my leg a couple months ago. So when I'm just sitting there on the couch, I'm like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
So that was part of it, and then the other part is just the idea of I'm looking to get back on the stage, so I needed to
Get that tight.
just get the rust off. You know what I mean?
Tell you what,
So
man,
it's
that
coming out.
broken leg is like a superhero origin story now.
It really is, bro. That's
How did you
Martha
break
and
it?
Thomas getting shot like 50 times, because that's all we can talk about with Batman is how many times Thomas and Martha got shot.
How did it happen?
I was actually playing dodgeball.
As you maybe should.
as and so
We all have to have that reckoning where we're not the spring chickens we used to be when the Rush Hour movies were coming out.
genuinely the
Yeah.
origin story. So I go up to jump, and then everybody's like, "No!" Land on the side of my foot, fell over, whole body weight came down, snapped my leg, and the rest is history, man. So I'm relearning to walk. I just started driving again. I'm here for it.
That's
Same
why-
injury as his quarterback, Dak Prescott,
Sir.
suffered on
Wow.
the field a couple
Sir.
years ago.
Wow.
I bring up
Sir.
quarterbacks
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's what Jacqueline and I used to debate until Taylor Swift and Beyonce came in the
This
picture.
is very true. This is very. We did do that debate.
Yeah.
I'm not going into quarterbacks. And my situation is looking good.
Your
though.
former boy looking very good on
No,
Hard
my
Knocks.
current boy looking very good.
You love him?
Yes,
perhaps?
I do.
Who?
He's
Jordan Love?
Jordan Love.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Honestly,
The octave went up a little bit too high for me to
I
believe
needed
you.
a second. You said
I
it.
do not believe you.
I pulled your Chris Rock thing, and I was thinking Trey Lance, and I was like, and then no, she means the Bears. Got it, right? Yeah. No, Jordan Love does look good. He does look good. He looks good. And you finally put some weapons around him.
You willing to put a Bears person up for me?
No, now he got him confused with Justin Fields.
I know.
This man is chasing
Yeah.
his tails.
Oh my God. Wait, where is Love? What's wrong with me?
Packers.
You're right. Oh my God.
He's been writing too many jokes late at
It's
night.
okay. You're good. It's
Damn,
okay.
that's
But literally,
embarrassing.
like, to the Bears.
Well, okay, Justin Fields actually looks
Because
good.
it is
Jordan,
2023 and the Bears still suck.
well, Love looks okay. Justin Fields looks good.
It'll be a fun season.
Oh my God, we gotta go.
Hail to the Commanders.
That's it for us this week. What are you working on besides my nerves?
I mean, just pretty much that right now. Breakfast AM News, staying strong with the strike and whatnot. So more stuff will come out sooner than later, but I can't talk about it right now. So
All
we're just
right.
gonna chill.
Yeah, we're going to get Winston on stage more, too.
We're gonna get Winston
we
on
got
stage.
stuff in the works.
Speaking of stuff in the works, Mark, what do we have next week?
We got one of them Saw movies.
We do.
Got one of them Saw movies.
Ooh.
There's
gonna be
enough of
fun.
them to go around.
There's a lot of Saw movies to talk about. Which
Yeah.
one? That's why you tune in.
That's right. All right. We will see you all next time on Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. For Brian, Mr. Mark Ellis, and our guest this week, Winston A. Marshall. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see y'all next time.